All right, everybody, welcome to the Thursday edition of Locked On NHL. I am your host from Locked On Avalanche, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, from Locked On Lightning, Adam Denker. And on today's episode, we are going to be looking at each conference. I know this is normally the Thursday power ranking edition. We're going to do that with a little bit of grain of salt, but we'll look at the Eastern Conference. We'll look at the Western Conference. We'll kind of break everything down, where teams stand, who we're excited about, who we think can make a charge in the playoffs. And then for next week, just a little bit of foreshadowing, since this is really like, the second to last week of the season, with next week, probably most things locked up, with the exception of probably, the West wildcard standings. We will kind of shift gears just for the last week and kind of do a power ranking with the awards around the league, who's in first, second, and third for kind of the major awards. So something to look forward to for next week. But right now, let's bring in Mr. Adam Denker. And I think we're going to start with the Western Conference. And because we'll get to the East in the next segment. Everything is set up in the East. Everything is clinched. In the West, not so much. So, there's still teams fighting not just for the wild card. In the Pacific, the only team that's clinched is Calgary. So everything else is still up for grabs, which means obviously those two wild card spots are up for grabs. So right now you have Edmonton sitting in second place with 96 points. You have the Kings in third place with 92 points. And those pesky, annoying Vegas Golden Knights just won't go away at 89 points. And then, you have the wild card with Nashville and Dallas mixed in there too. This is the fun part of being a hockey fan, of seeing this many teams still in it, right down to the wire. And you can even throw Vancouver in there if you wanted to, with 87 points.
Yeah, it's definitely the most exciting, and I think I have you to blame for this. I think at first I was originally on the train of come on, I want to see Vegas continue their playoff streak, but you've in recent weeks just turned me full heel on the Knights. They're 6-3-1 of their last 10, but at the same time, we said last week or the week before, whatever the last show was that Vegas, regardless if they win out, still aren't completely in control of their own destiny. And, it's never a good situation in any sport where you have to rely on other teams to kind of help you out, because that's never something you want to do. But in the process of going full heel on Vegas, I have fallen in love with the Lightning. And I have to pull up my Lightning. Their 2020 Stanley Cup opponents, the Dallas Stars, who everything about this team, from Jason Robertson to just Tyler Seguin, seeing him really mold into a leader the last couple of years, and just Jamie Benn obviously doing Jamie Benn things. You never expect a superstar like him to constantly be in fights as often as he is. And really, in that stacked West, I mean, Dallas has really just played fantastic hockey in recent months, and hopefully they could continue it into the last week and pull out that last wild card spot over Vegas.
Overall, they have been playing well. They have lost their last two, surprisingly.
Yeah.
But they are in the second wildcard position right now, 2 behind Nashville. So, 2 behind Dallas is Vegas. Dallas does have that game in hand, so that helps them over Vegas. But if you listen to Locked On Avalanche, Kyle and I did a segment last week, excuse me, where we were talking about how all these people want to see, or who will the Avalanche have in the first round, and obviously that's still up in the air, and everybody wants to just think that if Vegas gets in, all of a sudden, miraculously, they're just going to turn it on and just make their way, like hot knife through butter, through the Western Conference. And it was David Backus, who was on a radio show, who had to kind of sit up and say, like, why do we think that? Why do we think, because after 82 games of struggle for Vegas,
Yeah.
that if they make the playoffs by, some minor miracle and they get in on the last day of the season and they sneak in, why do we do that? Why do we just think that team, we know what they are, we know what they've been for 82 games. And then all of a sudden when they get in, it's just, they're going to take the red pill or the blue pill and then just be, you know, that much better than Colorado where they're going to just wipe the ice with them.
Yeah.
I don't get the thinking. I mean, Vegas could still get in, very much so. And you that's what you're going to hear. You're going to hear, watch out for Vegas, and it's everything that they've done in the past. When this team struggles, I'm sorry, they made some boneheaded moves, and they're struggling for it. They're still in it, but they made those moves with the anticipation of, this is going to take us from already a playoff team to maybe fighting for a President's Trophy. That was their thinking. And I understand that thinking, but it's failed. It's failed. And you could say it's failed miserably. And again, they still might get in, but that's not what they wanted to do. They didn't want to get into the playoffs like by the skin of their teeth on the 82nd game of the season. So, I mean, our head's going to roll after this season. You tell me. I don't know.
Most likely, yes, if they don't make the playoffs. We've seen that Vegas has no qualms about trading leaders and big name players on a yearly basis. So why is the front office safe and the coaches safe? I think really where Vegas went wrong, and we've spoken about the whole Eichel situation, but really it's not so much what you got in return of that, it's what you gave away. And what you gave away along the way. And I think the biggest mistake, especially if Vegas gets into the playoffs, I think the biggest mistake that they'll look back on when the season's done, because I fully don't expect them to make it past the first round, because A, this team has had huge injury problems all season long. B, you've had to put guys on LTIR on and off all season where you really don't have any chemistry going because of those two factors. And so you expect this team to go into the playoffs and just automatically turn it on. As much as I like to say that about my Lightning, who I am very critical of, hockey doesn't work like that. I mean, you can have the best players on the ice. I mean, we see it in the All-Star game all the time. Just how off base those guys are. But really what it comes down to is, with the mistakes with this Vegas team, is trading away Marc-Andre Fleury. I like Robin Leonard. I think he's a fantastic goaltender. Is he a starter on a lot of teams in this league? Absolutely. But is he a playoff goaltender that's going to take it to a cup? Absolutely not. And you had that with someone who's already proven that on two franchises. There in Vegas, their inaugural year, and then in Pittsburgh. So I don't understand that. Like, your team was already good enough then. Why get greedy? And that's really, I think, was going to be the moral of the story. And we might see that kind of that franchise philosophy shift after this year, that maybe let's not shake things up, let's settle down. Mike Rupp said on the Jeff Merrick show the other day, maybe that's what Vegas needs, is to kind of give it a year or so to let things calm down. And this isn't baseball or basketball where you could just trade guys willy-nilly.
No, and I think it's a deterrent for some free agents. I don't know. I don't know what, it doesn't look like they're going to have much to spend on free agency anyway. This coming off season. But, let's just say that it's a normal offseason and, free agents are signing. Who really is going to look at Vegas and say, okay, I'm going to sign a 4 or 5 year deal, which is really a year-to-year deal. The way that they ship people in and out with just reckless abandon, they're like the New England Patriots of hockey. Like, you don't feel good about being on that roster because you could get shipped out at any moment. And not even because you're playing bad, just because they overspend. They don't really think things through. And that's, a player like that of someone who signs is the person who gets shipped out at the end.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to go there because of that.
Yeah. And really all that does is foster an environment where a player that's already there, or a player that's coming in, the mindset is really, I got to help this team win a cup and be dominant during the regular season, or I might not be here in 6 months. And how do you have long-term success like that? I've never heard of any sports franchise, even the Patriots. I mean, they had a good core there. Not to get into too much football, but I mean, they had a good core there. Any good team that makes a lot of moves, that is consistently in the championship talks, every season in any sport always has like a core there. You really don't have that core there, except for maybe a couple of guys. But in hockey, it doesn't take 2 or 3 guys.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm so conflicted. On one end, I want them to get that last wild card spot. So
be careful what you ask for, man.
We can. Oh, I don't even care. I'm throwing this out into the universe.
And I was crazy. I was crazy for calling out Toronto.
Yeah,
and I was.
But I'm like conflicted on if I want the Avs to be the ones to knock them out, or if they just miss entirely. And either way would be great for me. But I kind of just want them to miss out and just have some humility and just know what it's like to think that you have everything lined up and then just fall. So I don't know. So I mean, just to wrap up the West, Colorado has the number 1 spot locked up. You have Minnesota, who's playing very well. You have St. Louis, who's playing fantastic right now. And that's a team you got to worry about. It's like, okay, that's a team who's coming into the postseason, one of the hottest teams. So look out for them. You have Calgary, who has I think they've locked. Yeah, they've locked up. They've locked at number 1. I know they have a playoff spot, but Edmonton can't catch them right now. And then Edmonton is second at 96. They should be clinching probably very soon.
Yeah.
And then, like we said, Los Angeles at 3 right now, but Nashville, Dallas in the wild card spots with Vegas and Vancouver on the outside looking in. So still a lot to determine on the West side. And maybe, this time next week when we're recording, we'll have it a little bit more fleshed out. All right. Let's hear from Shady Rays, and then we will get into the Eastern Conference. So Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that gives you the features of a $200 pair of sunglasses for a fraction of the price. That means polarized lenses, well-constructed durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. Also something you won't find anywhere else is Shady Rays Insane Protection Program, which Shady Rays includes lost and broken protection on every pair. They will send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what has happened to them. Give them a try, and if you don't love them, you'll pay nothing. It's as simple as that. Plus, 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. Exclusively for our listeners, head to shadyrays.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That code is locked on for their best deal of the season, which is 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses, backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews. They're good on Yelp. All right. Let's go to the East Coast. East is all set up in terms of playoff spots, but everything is X's. There's no Y's and there's no Z's yet next to any team names on the East Coast. Things are very tight in the Metro. And I am watching that very closely. You have Carolina, who you just assumed was going to be that number 1 team in the Metro, maybe in the East altogether. And the Rangers have caught them. They are right there with them. I think they're probably going to win as we're recording this. So yeah, it is not a done deal that Carolina is your number 1 team out of the Metropolitan Division. Watch out for the Rangers, and Pittsburgh's 9 back, so they're the number 3 seed, but they're still a very streaky, very good team.
Yeah, really has, I think, surprised all of us, the Rangers, the way they've played the last couple of weeks, and they're not only winning, but they're kicking the crap out of everybody.
Yeah, I know.
They're winning 5-1 right now as we speak against the Islanders. I believe they scored just that amount of goals as well in their last game against the Winnipeg Jets, who, let's face it, not very much a good team. But Pittsburgh's one of those teams where I think it doesn't matter where they finish. I mean, we know we're in the NHL now in the playoffs. Seedings really don't matter, especially to a team like this. Carolina is just one of those teams where I think they just ran out of steam. I mean, the way they were playing in the beginning of the season, it was the fact that they were just constantly neck and neck with Florida, because Florida has played fantastic all season long as well. Like, I'm talking probably only the kind of performance that you see consistently in NHL video games, just the way these two teams have played. And Florida's kind of kept up pace and was able to accumulate a lot of points and let the other teams, the Atlantic Division, beat up on themselves. But that Metro Division, man, I mean, the Rangers, just for what they have done this season, considering like, 2 years ago, we were talking about a rebuild with them.
Yeah.
I mean, I know there was a lot of change there the last couple of years, but tip your cap to not only to Jeff Corton, but even Chris Drury, who came in kind of like a weird situation where it was either let's go for it or continue to build. And I mean, he went for it, and look where they are now.
I think, that from that whole debacle in the offseason, bringing in Chris Drury, people were like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they were trending in the right direction, and look what's happened. They've continued to trend in the right direction, just with somebody different kind of at the helm as far as the GM goes. I think people thought, when they let those guys go, they were going to take a step backwards.
Yeah.
And they took a little bit of heat for their draft pick with Brendan Othman, who I really liked. And he's been, I can't remember what league he is in, but he's tearing it up in that whatever league that he is playing in right now. He's doing very well. That, like, the Rangers, you got to give them credit, because a lot of people were saying like they don't know what they're doing, and it seems like they do. So they're right there. They would not surprise me, just because of the standings, the way things are, if they do get that number one spot. And I don't know, man, like that's a very good trio right there with Carolina, the Rangers, and Pittsburgh. Moving over to the Atlantic, Florida's, got it pretty much locked up. They're going for a President's Trophy. Toronto, playing well. Look at the point differential. Like, you have for Florida, they're a plus 100 on the season. Plus 100.
That's insane.
That is, and my Avalanche are plus 86, and I'm thinking that's good. And wow, 14 more goals than that. So very. And number 2 is Toronto in that division at a plus 63. That's close to doubling up on them. That's just ridiculous. Do you think, I mean, the East, being an Avalanche fan and covering that team, you're looking, and anything can happen in the playoffs, right? Anything can happen. But if you're in the West, you're like, okay, it's probably going to be the Avalanche or Calgary. You think those two should meet in the Western Conference Finals?
Yeah.
And Florida is, the best team in the East. They have a much more difficult road because the East is, a lot more depth. Yeah. But do you think there is, like we always say, like, is there a team that can beat the Avalanche 4 times? And that's going to be a tough thing to do.
Yeah.
Do you think the same for Florida? Do you think, because Florida has a lot more teams to go through that are much more competitive.
Mm-hmm.
But do you think this is like going to be, a race to Florida versus Colorado in the Stanley Cup final, or has Florida got their work cut out for them?
I think nothing is guaranteed in the Eastern Conference. I think it is. We're just as likely to see Florida in the Stanley Cup final as we could possibly see Boston, just the way that, the Stanley Cup playoffs go. I think when you look at the East, it might be a little bit of a slightly more difficult path, just because you have teams that are grizzled playoff teams. You have obviously the 2 ones that stand out are Tampa and some of those guys from the Rangers have had playoff experience elsewhere, but really and
Pittsburgh's always there, right?
Yeah, Pittsburgh's always there, and then you have Washington, let's not forget, who won a couple of years ago, and really it's just the Alex Ovechkin show out there.
They're playing much better right now.
I know they are really playing more as a team, which is very concerning for opposing teams. But I just think that really what it comes down to, and you and I have had this conversation, and I've spoken about this significantly on my show in recent weeks, is that the game is played a lot more different in the playoffs, and there are teams, and we've spoken about this with teams like the Islanders. They're built for the playoffs. We see with your Avalanche, we see with the Panthers, we see at the Hurricanes. Those teams are clearly built for the regular season, but when we go to the playoffs and the games are 10 times more intense, can they make that jump? Can they make that transition in that kind of atmosphere? We saw it with Florida. They had a lot of fight in them against my Lightning last year, but ultimately couldn't hang just because of the playoff atmosphere, the type of play. And that's really what's going to be. Can they go out there and sustain 60 minutes of brutal hits and big time play and physical play for the most part, and a defensive oriented play throughout that entire period for 7 games? That's really what's going to determine whether or not these teams could get there.
Yeah. Yeah, like I say, Washington, I was thinking they'll get there just because there's such a gap.
Yeah.
They're going to make a clinch a spot because you have the Islanders who are closest to them. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
you knew it was going to happen, but you're like, okay, that's maybe a month ago you're like, that's maybe like the weakest team in the East.
Yeah.
But they're playing much better now, and it's surprised me how well that they are playing. So it could be one of those things.
Yeah,
where they will give Florida a run. I'm not going to say it's going to go 7 games. It still might go 5 or 6, but every one of those games will probably be close.
And you said it on the show perfectly a couple of weeks ago, is that a team like this, they need to get this series over with quickly. Even if maybe you don't think there's any danger of Washington winning the series, you don't want them winning game 4 if you're trying to sweep. You don't want them winning game 5, because all that does is build confidence, and Washington's going to go out there and take it to you. And it's kind of like treading water. The longer you do it, the more tired you're going to get. And then can you tread water for a couple of rounds?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if Florida could do that. Obviously maybe I might be a little biased just because maybe that's a team that I really don't know if I want the Lightning to run into really at that point.
Florida.
No, Florida's had their number. Florida's had Tampa's number all year. But like I said, then again, Tampa is winning 3-0 over Toronto right now. So I might change my opinion by the end of the night.
Okay.
But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, we're going to really see what these teams are made of. We could only speculate, obviously, but I think Washington's as good of a first test as any for that Florida team.
Yeah. All right, let's hear from Bet Online, and then a couple of questions I want to throw your way, mainly about 2 teams in particular. So betonline.net, #1 source for all of your sports betting stats and info. Find all the latest sports developments, league reviews and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. BetOnline is your continued source for all of your sport wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action. It's betonline.net, where the game starts. So 2 teams that have kind of like a stigma attached to them. One is my team in the Colorado Avalanche, and the other one is the Toronto Maple Leafs. And when it comes to the playoffs, until they prove otherwise, this will be the sticking point for these 2 teams. And it's, the round that they just can't seem to get out of. For Toronto, it's the first round, the very first round. For Colorado, it's the second round. Been knocked out of the second round for three years in a row. I know it's so difficult to predict. What would, if they started right now, who would Toronto's matchup be?
It'd be the Lightning.
It would be the Lightning.
Yeah.
So I know this answer. All right, let's give us a little foreshadowing. Like,
okay,
how's that series gonna go, Mr. Adam Denker of Locked On Lightning?
If we see, if we're going off solely tonight's performance, like I stated,
you can't do that though, man.
I mean,
that's cheap.
Well,
we're going off just the
first 2 periods of tonight's game.
If the Lightning get a win of 4-0, I mean, that just means
to be fair, the Maple Leafs have the Maple Leafs have beaten the Lightning 2 times in their 3 meetings thus far this year. So
okay,
So yeah, we're looking at this as a 3-2 potentially, series lead for the Maple Leafs if we're talking about this hypothetically in a playoff series. But if we see the Maple Leafs play the way they've played mostly throughout the entire year, and we see the Lightning play the way we've seen them play tonight, which this series will go 6 or 7. And then really what it comes down to is what version of Andre Vasilevsky are we going to get? Because I've spoken about it on my show extensively. He has looked completely fatigued over the last couple of weeks. And, partially that has to do with just the amount of games he has played over the last 2 years, as well as just John Cooper kind of overplaying him, kind of getting a little bit over ambitious. He loves to run Vasilevsky out there. If Cooper could, he'd play him 82 games. And so really that's what it comes down to. Can Vasilevsky, weather the storm when you have Mitch Marner and Tavares, and especially Austin Matthews, who we also don't know what he's going to look like when he comes back. He's injured as well. He's not playing tonight. So really we're going to see that, what kind of game that's going to turn into because of those factors, as well as can the Lightning weather the storm down low? Because we've seen it multiple times this entire year. The Lightning have pretty much relied on Vasilevsky to kind of win games for them, and they've been very susceptible to high danger chances in front. So really, that's what it comes down to for that series.
What do you think of Toronto? Like, if they don't get out of the first round again, you're seeing some changes there. It's fairly or unfairly. It's probably going to happen. And you might see it at the head coach. I don't think they'll switch GMs. I just feel like they like him too much to really achieve it, and he's just one of those young, like I think that's where the move will come. Is in the head coach. But let's say they get out of the first round and lose in the second round. This is a team that Toronto isn't looking at it as we keep losing in the first round, so anything beyond that is a success. They're not looking at it like they're looking at it as like, no, we need to go win the Stanley Cup. So if they get out of the first round, does that save Keefe, or is he still gone because the main goal is winning a cup?
I think that saves everybody, because I think if they lose in the first round, I would I'll go out on a leg and say that we'll see some major moves. And I think I forgot where I heard the conversation had, but there are some Leafs fans that are very frustrated with the way John Tavares has played. They feel like he hasn't lived up to the leadership role that really you expected him to have up there. I've from some of the Leafs games that I've seen this year, there are games where you might not even realize that John Tavares is on the ice, and he's the captain of that team.
He is,
and it was such a huge deal when he went there. It really turned the hockey world on its head, because you really thought, with the way he played, with the way the Islanders were when he was there, that he was going to be there for life, and clearly that hasn't happened. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say, if they get eliminated in the first round this year, I think not only Sheldon Keefe goes, I think that you might see some big names possibly moved, mainly John Tavares.
Could be. It'll be something to see for sure. Because I feel, like I said, I don't feel like Toronto is just like, okay, this year, our goal is to get out of the first round. No team is going to say that. You know what I mean? Not even the number 8 seed is going to say that. But for Toronto, I mean, you need to win there, and not just win in the regular season. You need to make some runs. You have to make some deep runs, and they just haven't been able to do it yet. Same thing with my Avalanche. You know what I mean? They're not, heads aren't going to roll if they don't get out of the second round. Like they love their coach. They just extended him. Like nothing's going to happen.
Well,
but you are fair game now. If you,
I'll ask you the same question. If the Avalanche get eliminated in the first round, who are the heads to roll there? Because I would have to imagine that's obviously that's going to become a big shock to everybody. Probably one of the biggest upsets since the Lightning won the President's Trophy and got knocked out by Columbus in 2019. Do you think it's
swept? Right?
swept?
Yes, yeah.
Swept.
Can't
I
forget
mean,
that
come
part.
on, dude. That was 2 cups ago. So
No, I don't think anybody. The reason why nothing major is going to happen, in the front office or behind the bench,
yeah,
is because, like I said, they love Jared Bednar and they've extended him. Joe Sakic is royalty. He's not going anywhere. Even if the Avs do win it all this year, next year's team is looking very different. There's a lot of unrestricted free agents. There's a lot of restricted free agents who you'll sign most of those, obviously, but the team will look different no matter what.
Yeah.
So I think they will look at it as like, okay, we had a really good team and we didn't get it done. And like how we're saying with Toronto, they're might make some deals, bring in some new people. That's going to happen for the Avalanche anyway, because they have they're going to have a lot of roster turnover with unrestricteds leaving. And I think they'll just regroup and say like, all right, let's try it with a new batch of players. We have our core. And let's see if we can bring in some other free agents and that'll get us over the hump. I don't know.
Yeah.
That'll be their mindset, but no, they're pretty solid with their front office and coaching staff for sure. Yep. So things to watch though. Always fun. Always the game within the game. So, all right, everybody, that will wrap it up for this Thursday edition. Follow Adam and I on our respective shows. Like I said, I host Locked On Avalanche. He hosts Locked On Lightning, and we will be back next week and we'll kind of discuss the awards and where we are power ranking specific awards. And I can't wait to talk about that Norris Trophy. Oh yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch everybody next week.